today we're going to turn this cup. Now, the cup is not bone dry, the clay hasn't gone white, but it's still got a bit of moisture in it, and we call this leather hard. I'd start by feeling around the edges just to see what the thickness is, and I can feel that around these edges there's not a lot of clay to take away. So down the bottom there is probably a couple more mil to work with, and if I take my fingers and put on the inside and have them at the width of the base of the pot and sort of pull them out and put them on here, sort of is going to give me a bit of an idea where I'm going to go to. So I'm just going to really tidy up the bottom of this pot. So unlike when you throw and you have a dry wheel, with this one we're going to put a little bit of moisture on the top of this so that when we put this rim on, we create a little bit of suction on the top of the wheel. Now it's very important now that we're going to centre this pot. So I'm going to do that by centering it up here. So I'm just going to hold my finger, and you can see that where the pot comes away from my finger, that I want to move the pot half that distance towards my finger. And then I'll keep my finger in one spot and tiny bit more this way. If you moved it all the way to your finger, you'd move the pot off centre to the opposite direction, the exact same amount that it was off centre the other way. Once we've got it centred, we're going to take some clay balls and we're going to put them down pressing onto the wheel head and slightly into the pot, halfway and halfway on each side of the pot. We want to do this at the same time, because if we put one down, we'd push the pot off centre. So we want to put them both down at the same time. And then I'm going to turn the wheel and get the other two pressed down, and that's going to hold the pot securely on the wheel. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a needle tool, and I'm just going to have a line, a circle, put around the top to define where I'm going to turn to. So I'm anchored down here. I'm going to have my middle finger on my left hand in the middle of the pot, and that's going to help hold the pot on the wheel, but also anchor this whole little setup here with my hands. And I'm just going to draw a light circle around the bottom of that pot. Then I'm going to take a turning tool. There's lots of different sizes of turning tools, and you just work with whichever one suits you. You'll work out. You might want to have a point, you might want to use a curve, you might want to use a larger tool, and you can hold it this way or upside down. So I'm going to use this tool, and I'm going to use this curved edge. Now I hold this tool like a conductor's stick, like I'm conducting the orchestra. If I hold it too far back, you're going to get too much movement. So I like to hold it quite close to the top so I have as much control over it as possible. I'm anchored down here. This hand here is working with this hand here, so they're working together. And I'm just going to start. You want to hold your tool quite firmly, and you can see that clay is coming off like you're grating chocolate. And that's sort of what you're looking for. You don't want it to be too dry, because it will be a powder and you don't want to breathe in the powder, but you don't want it to be too wet that it's sticking everywhere. So just trying to get it to a nice consistency. And again, have a look up the side of your pot, and we just start cleaning up the side. There's not a lot to take off this cup because we turned it on the wheel. So we really shaved away a lot of that. So that means that the turning was really already done, so now we're just cleaning that up. So we could feel across the base there. Now we might just take off a few little rough bits going along. So I'd normally come along and do concentric circles, moving around, coming towards the centre of the pot, just nice and lightly. And you could, if you wanted to leave the circular pattern, you could, or you could come back with a flat edge tool and you could just clean that off a little bit. And then I'll just come back with a moist, just lightly moist sponge and just knock off any of the sharp edges. And that would be enough to turn that pot. Then we carefully take these away. And there you go, you've got a nice little turned cup. So at this stage you might decide that you want to put a handle on the cup, and there's a lot of different ways that you can put handles on. So I'll show you one way that I do it. I've made this tool, it's this little handle maker. It's a piece of wire and I've twisted it. It's quite a firm wire, so there's no flex in it. And I've got this piece of clay here and I'll just get it into get a flat surface. Now I'm going to hold this tool and I'm going to run it through the top of that clay. And if I keep running that through, that just pulls out. It doesn't always pull out like that. Sometimes you have to actually pull that other clay out like that to pull that out, but that just pulled straight out. So we've got this nice even handle shape. So now I'm just going to cut the end off that handle to even that up. So I've got a nice flat face here. I might give that a little bit of a tap. And so you could just put this on as just as how it was pulled out from the block, or we could give it a little bit of a pull. So I'll show you how to give it a bit of a pull. So have a look around, have a look at the shape of your cup. Sometimes it might be a little bit uneven, and work out if there's a symmetry or if there's a space that you might want to put the handle on. So I'm going to put it on here. I've got this needle tool here which has got it's a bit of a scratching tool. So I'm going to start by doing a little scratch on the top and getting a little bit of water on there. And I'm going to scratch through that water again. To create a little slurry. Then I'm going to take the top of the handle and I'm going to scratch through that. I'm going to put a little bit of water on that and scratch through it again. This is a very important join because this is where all the weight goes when you're having a cup of tea. So I'm going to press that on, give it a little bit of a wiggle. And so you could either just cut it and join it like that, or we could just give it a little bit of a pull. So I'll get the water close. I'll just get some water onto that handle. And I'm just lightly through this part of between my thumb and finger, just doing a light pull just to get a little bit of taper happening down the bottom here. So I'm not squeezing a lot at the top, but I'm squeezing a little bit more at the bottom, and you can see how it's becoming a little bit like a pan handle. And then once you've sort of got that nice taper going, then we can have a look at how we're going to turn it, where we're going to cut it. So you sort of have a look at it, work out if you want how big or how small. I might cut a little bit off and have another look. Now the thing about handles is you don't want to, you want to cut off, you know, 1/2 centimetre at a time. That way you don't cut too much off, and you can keep having a look at your design. So that's not looking too bad, but I might go a little smaller, cut a little bit more off. Okay, so that's not looking too bad. So I want to check the straightness of the handle, make sure it's running nice and straight. I'll do a little mark with my needle tool so I know where it's going to go. I'll pop that up with my scratching tool, do a little scratch down there, get a little bit of water on it and scratch through again. Now I'm not going to scratch the bottom of the handle this time because it's quite wet and it's not the main join. So I'm going to give that a little bit of a wiggle on there. And we're not going to muck around too much with this handle until the handle has set a little bit. So once I've got that initial join, I can just leave that to dry, and then I'll come back later on and I can give it a sponge and clean it all up. Because the more you muck around with wet clay, the more it's going to start recording every touch you make. So we'll just leave it like that and we'll sponge that off later on. Okay, that's how you put a handle and turn a cup.